I have picked up my running game lately, but I gotta tell you, Fatty, good cycling legs do not equal good running legs. In a few short miles, I sure do develop a whole new range of muscle, fatigue, and soreness.
Oh, I have been there, but I sympathize and I have an answer for you. Don't run. You're a cyclist. Stick to the pedals and your legs will thank you.
Yeah, but I bought a brand new pair of trail running shoes, so not an option. Plus, I like to run, minus the throbbing thighs afterwards.
Okay, then why don't you try rubbing away some of that pain with a Floyd's of Leadville balm? I mean, there's no reason to sit around with aching legs when you've got a perfectly good sponsor like Floyd's of Leadville ready to help you out.
Now you're thinking. In fact, I was watching a video on the Leadville Trail 100 run, and a runner being profiled actually used some Floyd's balm on their legs during one of their stops in the middle of the race. I thought that was pretty amazing. And while I'm far from, or probably never do, an ultramarathon or anything close to the Trail 100 run, there's no reason I cannot apply a little of that Floyd's magic to my run-induced leg soreness.
I'll tell you what, Hottie, I'm going to make you a deal. You can keep running as long as you keep applying Floyd's of Leadville CBD balm to your legs.
Deal. And of course, our listeners can get a deal on Floyd's of Leadville tonics and all other products to help you relax and recover. Just head to floydsofleadville.com and use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount.
Thanks so much to Floyd's of Leadville for being the title sponsor of our show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It is season 4, episode 23 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
And I am Fatty. In our last episode, our interview with the up-and-coming Melissa Rollins, who scored a 6th place and a pro contract, you heard us reference more than once the winner and her amazing 2-hour and 6-minute to pipeline to finish line time, and that is Rose Grant. We were so impressed with her splits and her performance that we dropped her a line, asked her to come on the show. Luckily for us and you, she said yes.
Rose Grant, the back-to-back champion of the Leadville Trail 100. Rose told us in the aftermath of her win, she has been getting a lot of "how did you do it" questions. And so in addition to detailing her race, she's also doing some knowledge drops to help us all go from 6th and Harrison to the top of Columbine and back faster.
And we're going to get to Rose in just a second, but first, an announcement, sort of an update on our podcast kit plans. We met last Monday, we're recording on Thursday, with the good folks at DNA, and the design process is underway. In fact, Hottie, I understand in a couple hours, we are going to be seeing our kits or some options for our kits for the first time. Hottie and I, we outlined our wants with the design team and discussed deadlines. So yes, the wheels are in motion.
Yeah, I was thinking on that call, man, this is super easy. I can't tell you how many club kit design fiascos I've been through, Fatty. I've been through the back and forth with the company, the infighting over the look with other team members. The process can be a real headache. So it was a relief to get on with DNA and leave most of the heavy lifting to them.
Yeah, I mean, we really did. We got on a call. We showed them some designs we like, talked about colors we like, and they're really going to do the rest because custom apparel is the real bread and butter of DNA. I mean, you can get cycling clothes without logos and design of your choice, but DNA is really about creating a unique look. And whether that's on jersey or bibs or arm warmers or all of the above, which is what we're going to do, the process Hottie and I are going through is the same one any one of you can use.
So keep your ears peeled for when and where you can check out our kit because we're going to be looking for your input as well. In the meantime, head over to DNA Cycling and start planning your own design. Just go to dnacycling.com to learn more and be sure to tell them the Leadville podcast sent you.
Our guest is the 2019 and 2021 Leadville Trail 100 champion, Rose Grant. Yes, she is 2 for 2 at Leadville, 2 entries, 2 wins. Rose is no newbie to mountain bike racing start lines either. She has piled up an amazing record. 5 times national marathon champ, 4 times on the world championship team. She's a real veteran who has seen her share of ups and downs.
Add to that, she is a mom and a wife and a real example of how to balance a crazy career like pro mountain biking with what really matters when you get down to it. Get out your pen and paper, if that's still a thing. Okay, your iPad and keyboard maybe, because Rose Grant has some good lessons on how to race this Leadville Trail 100 thing and how to keep it all in perspective.
Here she comes, make some noise, this is Rose Grant!
Your defending female champion and the second time in a row. She's snapping the tape, the 2021 State of Cycling Leadville Trail 100 champ, Rose Grant.
Rose Grant, thanks so much for being with us. You are the 5 times mountain bike marathon national champion. You first earned those stars and stripes in 2014. Now, we didn't see you in Leadville till 2019, so I'm figuring, okay, what's the lag here? No Rose Grant until 2019 at Leadville. So tell us, how did Leadville finally get on your schedule?
Well, those early years is really right as I was finding mountain biking and racing, and I was medaling with the shorter distance events. So the Pro XCTs, a few World Cups scattered here and there as I was able, World Championships for the cross country Olympic. And as I was younger then, I felt like that was the time of my career if I was ever going to be able to pursue those events. And so I didn't feel the need or the pressure or the motivation to race anything over a marathon distance. So finally, I think I'd overcome a season of injury in 2018, accepted just a change in my direction, what I was going to be pursuing this later half of my career, and decided that 2019 was the year for me to do Leadville, and I'd been encouraged to do Leadville by my team manager of Stan's, Kenny Wen. And he actually had told me that it was his dream to see me win Leadville. No pressure or anything. But that was largely motivating to pursue it that year, and it worked out with my calendar really well also.
And it obviously worked very well on the course as well. So you had never done a 100-mile race before, but you crushed it with, in 2019, 7 hours, 36 minutes, 9 seconds. You won by 18 minutes your first year. And we could talk about that. And, maybe we'll go back in the offseason and have a long conversation about your first Leadville win and how you were so incredibly fast. But this year, you were even faster. You finished 12 minutes faster than last time. And so, Hadi and I could just sit back and for the rest of the episode, just ask you a simple question: how? But tell us 12 minutes. That is incredible. That is an amazing gain off an already amazing time.
Thank you. Yeah, I was really just hoping to break 7:30 and just improve upon my time from before. I knew that with the long races I had done and having raced the event before, that I do have a natural ability to be able to pace really well. And just also, I know how to feel my body when I'm out there. I just know what I need, and it's very natural for me. And having had that experience in 2019, I knew that I could make up time because I finished that first race feeling pretty good, actually, and that I had some room to dig a little bit deeper.
You did race in 2020. There was not a lot of racing in 2020, including the Leadville Trail 100, but you did win BWR Cedar City in 2020. That was kind of an October type event. Barely got that squeezed in. Then coming into 2021 Leadville Trail 100, you'd won the Butte 100. By the way, folks, the Butte 100 is an absolute, you should call it the Brute 100 because it's like 100 miles. It took Rose Grant a top-notch marathon mountain biker, 9.5 hours to finish that thing. It's a brute. The Brute 100. I'm renaming it. And you were third at XC Nationals, so on the podium there. But the real target seemed to be Leadville and Breck Epic for Rose Grant for 2021. Now, getting ready for these events at altitude, I heard maybe you were sleeping in an altitude tent?
Yeah, I knew after 2019 that having been at altitude long enough, 2 weeks long enough to make a significant difference in just my sensations at altitude. And you put so much time and effort and energy into these big, massive goals that it's worth it at the end of the day for me to just top it off with those extra minute details and do it right. So I contacted Mountain Air Health out of Boulder earlier this spring, and we got set up with an altitude tent that I slept in pretty consistently at night starting the middle of May, knowing that I'd be at Nationals in Winter Park in July, and that would be a really good test, probably my first real good test at altitude. And I do think it made a significant difference just in my experience from 2 years ago, where I went there without any acclimating and right before the event. And I really felt pretty terrible in 2019 when I went to Winter Park for Nationals. But this year I did feel significantly better, and I think that's such a biological thing that everyone is really different and has to do what's best for them. I mean, showing up right before the event could work fine for some people, and altitude doesn't really affect some people, and then it really affects others. So once you kind of know how it affects you, you can make your plans, based off of that.
Let's talk about what did work and what other preparation you used for a faster time this year. Altitude tent, that's a biggie, obviously. Not something that most folks who listen to this podcast would be able to take advantage of. But there are other things that you obviously did learn from 2019 that you used. So what other prep did you bring into this race that made it possible for you to have such an amazing day out there? Well,
this was the focus of my season, really, doing Leadville. And I was all in for Leadville, and I don't make a lot of results-based goals, but I really wanted to defend my title at Leadville, and it was very motivating for me. And as time went on, we had all these other women signing up that gave the depth of field like some real deep competition. Mm-hmm. And so then I'm, like preparing for this race and really reminding myself how important it is as an individual effort and really focusing on executing my race plan and not letting the others get in the way of distraction. And, I think there is a difference between having a plan and then also being able to execute your plan in the moment. And so my goal was really to have a plan, be confident in my plan, and then just go out there and execute it. And irregardless of how anyone else is riding, keep the focus on myself. And I did learn from 2019. I knew, how things kind of shake out at the end. I know that the race really doesn't start till power line on the way back. And I knew how important it was to fuel and to drink and pace. And, where you want to not be your nose in the wind on the flat sections. And so, I think, it really just all came into play.
Let's get to 6th and Harrison at 6:30 in the morning. And because this was a pretty dynamic race, the ladies' race was, at least from what I could tell, standing in the feed zone. But it sounds like, Rose, that Katarina early on made the race. Like she was dictating a pace that was pretty sick from the start.
My eyes, to be honest, were on Katarina as the most experienced racer of us all. She had raced the Telluride 100 2 weeks prior to the Leadville, and then she had stayed at altitude, and I knew she wanted to win. I knew we all wanted to win, but I mean, Katarina's Katarina. Yeah, it was cold. We started out, and on the Kevins climb, I knew I had Hannah Finchamp was out in front of me. Katarina was out in front of me, Sarah Sturmey, and I just settled into my pace, and I could see.
I want to interrupt you and ask, how are you able to settle into your pace when, you're obviously intimidating to many of the racers. Many of the racers are intimidating to you, and there's got to be a temptation to set aside all of those plans you've made and say, well, I just got to stay with these people no matter what, whether I go into the red or am able to beat them or what. It just seems like it would be so hard to stick to the plan like you're talking about.
Well, I know Leadville's a puzzle. I know that it's easier to make mistakes out there than it is to not make them. And I know that most racers do make mistakes before they're able to get it right. And I know that my pace, my long distance pace, isn't someone else's. And I was mentally prepared going into the event, knowing we were starting in waves for one thing, that was going to be different. So, gold and silver corrals were going to be moving faster at the start than maybe where I settled in 2 years ago, because we had just a single mass start. And to not be enticed to go outside of those realms of what I knew I can maintain. Because, if you dig into those glycogen stores too early on, it's detrimental to the rest of your day. And so I went in with a very confident mindset of, this is an individual effort. You focus on you. And if someone else beats you on the day and you execute your plan really well, they deserve to be celebrated, and you deserve to be celebrated. You still had a victory because you executed your plan. So there really wasn't anything to lose. My coach also shared a story with me that was really important. And it was an athlete that he had coached going into Leadville previously, who did have a significant lead going into Powerline. Coming inbound was 13 minutes ahead of the rest of the field, and he blew up terribly and ended up finishing still maybe around the top 5. But it's incredible, the gaps that can open up between the beginning of the Powerline climb and the finish. It's can be significant. And so, I think that's another thing that I really kept repeating in my head is the race doesn't start until Powerline on the way back. And I shared that with people along the way, that were trying to pull me up to the other women, and I said, no, I can't accelerate. Just keep it steady. We're just riding steady over and over. Those little accelerations just burn matches over the course of that race.
So much wisdom there. So much wisdom. So I obviously interrupted you. We were on Kevins, and I 100% agree with you. I don't even know how many times, Hadi, you and I have said the rest of the race is just to soften you up for the climb up power line. But it's nice to hear you say that as well, Rose. But let's resume on Kevins. Tell us, continue on your day.
I still feel like that first part of the race was faster than previous. I felt a little more fatigued. I felt like I was rubbing against that line of, my zone of my long distance zone of what was maintainable for me. And it did feel faster. And so, and I will say also that I do like the longer distances, and those shorter cross-country Olympic races are hard for me biologically. I just don't have, a real natural, real fast speed. I guess I like to just go a real steady speed for a long period of time. And so that is partly why it's easy for me to pace on these longer days too, just because it's more natural. Going hard is hard for me. And so, I'm settling into my pace up Kevins. I can see Hannah and her orange seal kit up above. I lose sight of Katarina. I really didn't know exactly where the others were. And I know by the time we got to Powerline, and I didn't know this at the time, but later after the race, I was told Katarina was 5 minutes in front of me at the or not the pipeline feed zone, which is 30 miles into the race. That's a significant lead. But that's also kind of a cool thing about that out and back is you really do get a good sense of where the other riders are. So by the time I really settled into my own pace up Columbine and was able to, I guess, recover a little bit from maybe this, just maybe it was some of the surges from riding with a group and knowing how important it was to stay on wheels. I was able to really recover from those, and I felt a lot better as we crested the top of Columbine. And then when we turned around to head back towards the finish line, the top 5 of us were all really close together, probably within about 2 to 3 minutes. And so that was nice too, just kind of gave me a sense of where we were at. And then as I descended Columbine, I caught Mariah and Sarah and passed both of them. And I realized that, maybe I was a better descender than them. And then Katerina and Hannah kind of dropped off towards the bottom of not long after we descended Columbine, and them being mountain bikers and pretty fast in the descents, I kind of just realized and kind of picked apart that competition to see where I was stronger than, my competition too, and just be aware of that as I was entering like the finishing stages of the event.
So as you reached the Columbine turnaround, I'm going to take you back to there for a second. Did you happen to look and compare yourself against your 2019 self? It's real easy to look at the splits at the turnaround and sort of do a multiply by 2, and that's about my finish time. That was not exactly right for you for 2019, but if it looked like you were actually just a few seconds slower at the turnaround point than you were in 2019. Was there any concern there that you were, after all of this work, that you had dropped off a little bit, or had you done the math and said, well, with the new course, I'm actually doing better? What was your mindset as far as compared to yourself then?
I had no idea what my splits were. I'd never studied it at all. So it was zero distraction. And I really rarely look at my numbers when I'm racing. If I am looking at my numbers, I think I'm really distracted by probably not feeling good or being discouraged or probably not in a good mind space. I actually don't have a power meter.
Can I ask what fields you do have on your GPS?
I had 3 screens. I had heart rate, I had miles, and I had time.
Oh, so very, very minimalistic. You're not tracking power. You're not tracking anything else. Do you have your GPS chime or anything like that to remind you, hey, it's time to eat, or anything like that?
No, I know, what I'm picking up at the feed zones and about where I need to be taking my gels or eating my rice bars. And that's what I typically consume. But I also ended up in this race picking up gels from the feed zones, additional ones, because I felt like I was a little low on fuel. And that was, unplanned, kind of, in the spur of the moment, like, I need a gel, I'm going to pick up a gel at this feed zone. So zero distraction. And we did turn around earlier, the slight course change, we turned around a little earlier. So yeah, I think that would just be like a lot of distraction in your head and, things you can't control. I think a big motto of mine when I'm racing is let it play out. You have a goal to get to, your turnaround point, which might be 3.5 hours or 4 hours, into the event, but you just never know what could happen. So I think that's just like, for me personally, that would not be a help. It would be a negative distraction for me.
Okay, so take us back to the race and the tactics here. The 5 of you are the top 5 ladies. Are you now together as you make the return towards Powerline, and describe how you got away from those 5?
We were all spread out a little. I think Katerina got down the Columbine climb leading. And Hannah was close by, and Sarah Sturmey and Mariah Wilson. Yeah, we were all within, maybe just a few minutes of each other as we finished that descent. And then I think we passed Katerina pretty early on before the Twin Lakes feed zone, and maybe Hannah too. So really riding back towards the power line climb, it was Sarah Sturmey, Mariah Wilson, and myself. And Sarah Sturmey had caught on to, like, as we went through Twin Lakes, I stopped for refuel, and Sarah Sturmey got away. She kept going with a little group that was in front of me. So Mariah and I were in a little group, and then Sarah Sturmey had actually like made some distance out in front. But then, you know, she had to stop at Pipeline, so we all regrouped, and then we were together going into the power line climb with a few other guys. And, you know, I mean, I can't say I was feeling great starting that climb. It's steep, it's slow. So I let Sarah and Mariah go in front of me, and they were side by side, you know, kind of, I wouldn't say they were hammering, but they were going just a little bit harder than I felt comfortable going. And I just slowed my cadence down and worked with what I had, and let a little separation happen between them and myself. Just maybe, you know, 5 to 10 seconds, and just a little bit distance. You're just moving super slow. And by the time we crested the top of that first steep, smooth climb, they really slowed down to recover. And I had just enough power in my legs to maintain a steady power, really. And that was just my whole strategy, is just you're not accelerating up through those climbs. Your cadence slows down, so your power really doesn't increase significantly. But when the terrain flattens out, you're maintaining momentum because your power is not fully dropped off. You know, you're not coasting because you have to recover because you've dug too deep on the steep sections. And I was able to get around both Sarah and Mariah. And then that climb just continues to undulate, and it's a little bit technical in sections. And I really do enjoy that climb, because then it's just kind of nose to the grindstone. And I was leading, and I never looked back. I just, you know, was very focused on maintaining smooth lines. You know, every little pedal stroke here, you know, you're just working with the terrain, and you know, really letting the race just come to you in the moment. And, you know, it was pretty fun passing guys along the way, and they were also encouraging. And, you know, and then I knew on the downhill, based on the Columbine climb, I could probably increase my lead by a few seconds on each of those downhill sections. And so, you know, it's just really keeping it smooth. Smooth is fast, and just letting that flow come to you and just really feeling it. You know, I didn't ever knew how far ahead of those other women I was. So I got to the pavement around Turquoise Lake, started back up the paved climb section on Keevens, and you know, I've learned more and more how strong Mariah can be when it comes to, you know, a straightforward power climb. And, you know, I admit, like, I raced a little scared, just expecting that she would be closing that gap. You know, but again, it's like you're at that point in the race, and yeah, things are shaken out, and I wasn't attacking by any means, because it was a very steady effort, but it was also an increase in effort of, okay, this is what I can maintain now, knowing that the end is within, you know, an hour and a half or 2 hours. And it did click up a couple notches. And, you know, it was just really that way through Keevens, and then back down the other side, and still, you know, kind of catching some guys, and but just very, very focused. You know, it was really such a cool thing when you're just, you know, kind of in the flow state, and so close to the finish. And so it was in the finishing stretch. It was a long dirt straightaway, and I was riding with a gentleman, really great wheel to be on. And, we're riding, it was fast, riding fast, smooth. And I look back and I see a rider just kind of down in the tucked position, arrow. And I couldn't tell, based on the jersey, who it was, if I recognized it as Mariah or not. And so just out of trying to stay safe, I really just basically attacked the last 2 miles of the race to the finish line. And the cramping had set in pretty significantly. So I was just working through that and really burned every match I had left, leading up to that finish. And I definitely had different sensations finishing in 2021 than I did in 2019. Just having, that different pressure and dynamic from such a cool, competitive dynamic with the other women, that we didn't have in 2019. So it was really fun, really neat.
Wow. There's so much I want to follow up on, but the first thing I want to note is the overarching theme of you truly were racing your own race. We hear people say that all the time, but you really were. You were, it sounds like, a diesel engine where you're just slowly putting more and more gas on until at the boulevard, you just, you lit up the rockets and away you went. What a great tactical and strategic race, obviously. And it clearly worked with a 12-minute difference between an already astonishingly fast 2019.
High five on the way up from Columbia Falls, Montana. Your first place pro female 2019 Stages Cycling 100, Rose Grant.
Hadi, I want to follow up on the question I asked Rose about her Columbine turnaround time. She topped out at 3 hours, 56 minutes and made it back home in 3 hours and 27 minutes. That is one impressive negative split. And
she did it by sticking to her game. We're going to hear more about how to do that in a second. But speaking of Flash, how about those new Shimano Di2 group sets? They were recently announced by Shimano. And yeah, we know this is the Leadville 100 mountain bike podcast. But you should know those two updated road groups borrow some notable things from the mountain bike side.
Yeah, Big E is something any Shimano mountain bike rider has known about for years, and that is the brakes. Dura-Ace and Ultegra now have servo wave technology, and that means the road levers have less travel before the brake pads begin to touch the rotors. And the system overall has smoother regulation so the rider can more precisely scrub speed.
Shimano road hydraulic always worked good, but one complaint was how abruptly the braking would engage. Now, like the mountainside, riders can feather the levers. Shimano engineers also put a little more space between the pads and rotors, about 10%, to reduce the chance of that annoying rotor pad rub. And they have made the bleed procedure much easier.
But again, most of this stuff is old news to us mountain bikers. So good on Shimano for taking something that already works and transferring it over to Dura-Ace and Ultegra. To check out the new 12-speed road groups by Shimano, go to bike.shimano.com.
Fatty, I just had a thought about our custom kit design with DNA. We could go full-on matchy-match, by dressing our Envy wheels up with some custom decals.
Oh, I love that idea. This is another one of those super easy to design and do things from one of our sponsors. Envy has a cool custom decal department where wheel owners can go in, pick out designs and color schemes, and then Envy prints them up, sends them out, and the rider ends up with a pretty trick-looking setup. You may have noticed I have done that on all of my bikes.
And take it from someone who stands in a busy feed zone, there is nothing better than a rider and a bike that stands out. We get it. The stealth Darth Vader look has been a thing in cycling, but Fatty and I are going to make a push away from the dark side and toward the custom and color side, and Envy can help with that.
Oh yeah, there is going to be some color in our future. Head over to the Envy website and click on the equipment menu. Under it, you're going to see the decal builder. Envy has the custom decals available for just about every wheel they offer. And while you're on the site, check out the rest of the Envy lineup. It's never too early to start thinking about next year's Leadville 100 build. Remember, it's Envy, ENVE.com. leadvilletrail100.com.
More now with 2019-2021 Leadville champ Rose Grant. Rose has some specifics now on how to get this race done, and then we get all philosophical with the champ. Rose, how do you figure out what your pace should be? That seems to be key to this race and the way you race. You know, when you're sitting there in Montana, how do you do it? You know you're going to be at altitude. It's going to be a lot harder than normal on you physiologically. So how do you figure out your pace?
I do train with power here at home, you know, and typically, when I'm training, I do have power, and that's, you know, my primary, but I would prefer to have power on my mountain bikes too. There's with a shortage of things, just a lack of parts, I guess, is why I don't have that. But it's also like just such a freeing thing to race on based on perceived effort. And I really have enjoyed it. I think too, as a, more seasoned athlete now also, to not have those numbers distracting you. I know that, you know, I have a really low heart rate. And so I know in a race like Leadville or the Butte 100, I think my max heart rate in the Butte 100 was around 150, and I maintained about between 145 and 150 throughout the entirety of the race. So just using that as a tool. Yeah. And then in Leadville, it was kind of the same. I think I maintained about 150 to 155, sometimes lower, until the very end. And then I did spike it a bit more, but, so I kind of have an idea of the range. And then, you know, really it's just sensation. So, you know, I don't want heavy breathing. You know, I know when I've gone too far, you can feel the burn too in your legs, like knowing you're burning the glycogen too quickly, and you're getting that lactic acid is going to be settling in. And those sensations, you know, for me are things that I avoid, to know that I'm staying away from that lactate burn feeling and the heavy breathing. You know, and I think that's just something that as you train, you know, and then you can know it and sometimes you can know it in training and not know it in race day because there's adrenaline and excitement and all these other things going on. But if you can just practice recognizing, you know, that this is how this is supposed to feel. And for whatever reason, it comes really easy for me. And I know that, you know, this is the way I'm supposed to feel. And I know when I have sensations that are not okay and I better back off, or I better fuel, or, you know, we correct it now before it's too late.
That is such a great learning. You need to understand not just what it means to look at your heart rate or your power and know when you are in trouble. You need to be able to tell that from perceived effort as well. As you noted, what is trouble in Leadville is different than in California. Absolutely, for sure. I want to ask you, you obviously have a lot of knowledge, wisdom based on what you brought to this race, and you did a lot of studying to excel in the race, especially this year. A lot of people are bound to be asking you, how did you do it? What should I do different? What have you learned? If you were going to give people, 3 pieces of advice, or however many pieces of advice to improve their own Leadville 100, what would you ask or tell them?
Well, the 2 specifically, 3, I guess, is very easy for me to identify because they're huge in my own performance, but it would be acclimating based on however that is for yourself, to just put that extra effort into that piece to just make sure. And then pacing, there's no accelerations. It's just very steady state effort, very individual. And fueling. So fuel early and often. And that's with calories, eating, and drinking. Those 3, I think, are going to be significantly game game changers for the Leadville 100.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about, or a little bit about acclimating, quite a bit about pacing. Tell us what you would recommend specifically as far as nutrition or about fueling during the race.
I can tell you what I really like, what works really well for me, and I've learned this with events, in the 5+ hour range, is I do use the GU Roctane in my water bottles. I do a little watered down version, so just 1 scoop per bottle. So you're getting calories in addition to hydration. So I like having that as a bit of a backup plan. If for any reason, consuming calories gets difficult. And then you're getting also, great amino acids and electrolytes along with your calories. And then in addition to that, the GU gels, and I just use a combination of different flavors with the Roctane and non-Roctane, but and they have caffeinated ones or non-caffeinated, and caffeine doesn't make much difference for me. I don't notice really a spike in energy with caffeine or not, but I'll add a little just in case. And then I make homemade rice bars out of sushi rice, and I make them savory. So I just add like a little soy sauce, some nutritional yeast, and a little olive oil. And I press it into a bar and then wrap it in parchment foil. And they store well. They're super portable. And it's a really good source of carbohydrates, fast absorbing carbohydrates, but it's not sweet, which is just nice, a nice salty change from all the sweet. And for Leadville, I think I ate 3 of those during my Leadville event. And then I can't remember how many, handful of gels, and then the hydration mix in my bottles throughout the race.
You also came into 2021 with a new gear sponsorship. This can be, a little disrupting for any athlete, whether you're a golfer or whoever. I mean, new gear means you got to try new things out. So give us a little outline of what your gear setup looked like for the LT100.
Absolutely. And I was a bit conflicted because I do race for Juliana bicycles, and Juliana doesn't make a hardtail, which was what I won in 2019, was on my pivotless hardtail. I did have support and permission to race my Santa Cruz highball, which is a hardtail, and pre-ride. And I was kind of on the fence. I really like my Wilder. It's a full suspension, cross-country race bike, that Juliana makes. And, but I also just kind of went back to what I knew would be the fastest choice on the day. I think Leadville is one on the climbs, and to have the lighter bike and stiffer bike for kind of plan my race setup for the climbs primarily. And so that's what I did. My gearing was based on the climbs, my tires were based on the climbs, and the bike was based on the climbing. So I ended up racing my Santa Cruz highball. And I had a SRAM Eagle cassette on the rear. So I had 51 tooth on the rear, 10 to 51. I raced with a 32 tooth front chainring, which was perfect, definitely still fast enough for all the flats. And, I was able to, ride all the steep stuff too. And then I raced my Aspen 225 tires. It's a great tire. It's a great all-around tire. And, since Maxxis came out with a 2.4 Aspen size, that's what I've been racing so much on. So I was really almost on the fence about, do I really want to go smaller for Leadville? I love the 2.4, and going back again to, I think Leadville's one on the climbs, like what's going to be a little faster up the climb, what's going to give you just that little edge in like rolling resistance and lightness on the climbing. And it was to go with a 225 Aspen.
Can I ask what pressure you ride at?
Let's see. I think I had around 18 in the front and 20 in the rear.
That's such good info. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have reserve wheels. and the width of the wheels that I had for Leadville are the 28, so nice wide. And they actually allowed a little more volume for the 225 Aspens too, which was really comfortable and ended up like I have no equipment changes. It really was an ideal setup.
Following the Leadville Trail 100, you packed your bags and went over to Breck Epic and got third on your Juliana, by the way, which was cool. And then since then, you've won Rebecca's Private Idaho, so congratulations on that. I do want to, Rose, talk about a little bigger picture with your career here, and that is a couple of things. First of all, upon turning pro, you, not so long after that, gave birth to Layla. And that obviously meant that you had to juggle being a mom and having a baby and having a pro mountain biking career, which is just an amazing feat in itself. But then along came some other hurdles for you. 2016, you tore an ACL. Then came, I think, a shoulder injury that eventually required surgery, a fractured fibula at the Pan American Championships. A lot of hurdles for you in your career here, all while trying to maintain motherhood and a pro mountain biking career. Do you feel like you race with some type of peace of mind now? I mean, I get the feeling you do. You have this peace of mind when you race. Why don't you explain that to folks, what your mental state is as you enter and participate in these races?
Yeah, of course. As a, newer, maybe less experienced athlete, and I'd kind of been caught up in a whole whirlwind of, this ultra focus of success, on the bike. And when I lost all of that, it really forced me to kind of, I guess, figure out a new perspective of like, man, there's so much to life outside of racing bikes and results. And this is a beautiful thing that I've been given. And, I just want to treat it with so much care, but also on the outside, I get this beautiful opportunity to experience motherhood and, be a wife to my husband. And we have this home and this life in Montana that is just incredible. And, it really put racing second. And it wasn't until that point where I was able to healthfully, in a healthy way, put some separation between myself and then my success on the bicycle. Just knowing like it's really fleeting and, oftentimes it can feel betraying in so many ways through injury or, so many different things, your body just not cooperating or COVID or, where you just can put so much energy into this focused thing that really doesn't last. And I feel too, like I really have been called into the sport. And so I feel like I have a responsibility to be present and to be prepared and to show up and to just, I don't know, like nurture that tool and that talent that I've been given, but not while sacrificing, my husband, my relationship with my husband or time with my daughter. And, I've been able to also reach a point too where I don't feel like I have anything to prove. It's like I do this for God and I do this for me, and I don't have anything to prove to anybody. If I do my best, like that should be more than enough. And so I really had found value in myself outside of race results, and performances. And it was really the best thing that ever could have happened to me in that way. So now I do really feel like I get to race with so much freedom. But you can't force anything, it really got to paddle with the current and not against it. Otherwise you're just wasting energy. And so, yeah, I really enjoy racing so much more now. And it's been really fun for me to really race without pressure for the most part. And just kind of let things come to me.
Right. And the cool thing, the results are still coming for you,
True.
which is great. So you're able to put life's priorities in order and still get results. So you're proof that it can happen.
And I feel like that's a blessing from being able to just balance it all and keep my priorities straight.
And I hope, Rose, as a mother, as you're passing guys out there, you're yelling out, "I'm beating you and I'm a mom." You have permission to do that. You understand? You have an 8-year-old and you're passing people, which is great.
I do joke that, if guys are concerned about getting chicked, they're actually getting mommed.
It's right. Which gets me to another subject, by the way, and I've heard you discuss this briefly before, and that is the idea of moms and racing and these big events. There seems to be a vacuum for this set of racers, moms who want to race, and that is, what do they do with their children as they're heading to start lines? And I think you have an answer.
I do feel passionate about this piece because it's, I think being a mom and a racer and being able to juggle it all has always kind of been awe-inspiring to other people, but it really is difficult. And when I've been asked over and over, like, hey, how do we get more women racing? I think so many of us that want to race do have kids. And it's what do we do with the kids, especially, if husband is also racing or working or, not able to play a support role. And perhaps that is, just having a way to communicate with all of us moms, have a forum or something where we can communicate. And then at the races, we can tag team the kids or help each other out. Or, or maybe in the future, it would be having some sort of childcare or having a mountain bike camp for the kids, during the event or something along those lines. And I understand that is a large logistical piece to add into an already busy race weekend. So, there's no pressure, but just kind of starting to brainstorm as to, could that really be an answer to allow more women to be able to race and participate in the events?
And for sure, you can't answer that question until you start asking it. So I'm just glad that you're bringing it up. It's an important question, and we all want to see more women, moms or not, out there. And this is, I think, an important piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, or single dads might need help too with childcare. I mean, it could, guys should not feel like, oh, that's a lady's problem. No,
for sure.
Guys are men out there who have to take care of children at times too, and childcare could help them, make it to start lines. Promoters too should be listening to this discussion, I think too. I mean, they should be involved in this in some way. Obviously, promoters have a hard time making profits at times, but for those that can help find or facilitate, ways to entertain kids, to keep track of them as mom and dad are racing, I think it only helps their cause altogether.
Well, thanks for your support in that.
All right, Rosa, we do something else on this show with our pros, and that's hot takes. We're going to do Rose's hot takes for the Leadville Trail 100. Now, this is Leadville focused. Quick questions for you, quick answers on Rose's hot takes for the Leadville Trail 100. Here's the first question. What is your favorite part of the Leadville Trail 100 course?
Power line incoming.
Interesting.
I think I know why. Although that's a rare answer, power line inbound. Most people do not go with that one. They choose a descent usually.
For sure. And the flip side of that coin, what is your least favorite part of the course?
Probably the flat section heading over to Twin Lakes, entering the Columbine climb.
Yeah, or the pavement area between power line and pipeline. People seem to like, either it's the wind or whatever kind of gets them. Okay, here's one we have discussed over and over on this show with pros and without. That is, for the Leadville Trail 100, is it hardtail or full suspension?
Hardtail.
Yeah, I knew that answer was coming. So what is one thing every racer should know or do? You already told us 3 things, but give us one more.
Pick up a jacket at the Twin Lakes feed zone before you start climbing Columbine.
Yep, Fatty and I have discussed the weather many times at the top of Columbine. Anything can happen up there. Either you send a jacket up.
I've gotten lucky, but I also live in the mountains, and I just know how quickly things can change and go awry.
Yeah. So either send a jacket up with the neutral support or have one there with your crew at Twin Lakes so you can stuff it in your back pocket and prepare for rain or hail or snow or whatever happens up there at the top of Columbine. Okay. Here's a relatively new hot take, Rose. Call-up songs. If they were calling up, you do get a call-up, obviously, when you enter a race. So what would be your call-up song if they started playing a song specific for you?
Lions by Skillet. You'll have to listen to that one. That's a good one. So empowering. Ooh, gives me goosebumps.
Oh, yeah. I like this. I know that one. I am another Skillet fan, so I approve of the band and definitely approve of the song. Very good call. Rose, oh, what a pleasure it's been talking with you. It's been a season of stories, and you told us an amazing story, shared an incredible amount of useful, practical information along the way. So thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
A postscript to our chat with Rose. Her daughter Layla is 8 years old. Now, Layla rides, and she has already climbed most of the famed Going to the Sun Road in Glacier National Park. She did all but the last bit. Then Mom helped her the rest of the way. And she descended the whole thing. That's about 15 miles. So did about 13 miles going up and the whole thing going down. Fatty, what were you doing at 8 years old?
Not that. Man, let's see. She's 8 and you got to be 18 to race Leadville. So we're thinking 2031, we are going to see this little phenom throwing it down, maybe demolishing Mom's times at Leadville.
I like it, and I hope I am there. Rose, you know, she's a total pro mom and total pro mountain bike rider. Speaking of pros, the one thing you probably notice about all of them is how meticulous they are with their fueling strategies. Now, many of them get help with what to eat and when, but the rest of us, Fatty, we got to figure it out for ourselves.
That is true. And a lot of trial and error has happened over the years, especially for me. There is a way to get more pro-like in less time with nutrition, and that is by turning to the feed. In fact, many of the privateers who have given up pro team life for a one-man or woman band approach to racing for a living use the feed as their nutrition supplier.
Yeah, the feed is the closest thing to having a team soigneur lay out your bike food daily. The feed can help identify what products are best for you and just how much you should be eating on race day. They actually have a team of consultants that can help you nail down your feeding strategy.
Yeah, fueling is one area where all of us need to be as pro as we possibly can. Eating and drinking enough, on time, and the right stuff all goes toward a successful day. And that is all something the feed can help with.
The feed is obviously the best place to get the nutrition you're going to train and race with easily, automatically, and at a great price. Go to thefeed.com/Leadville to sign up for a 15% discount on all your orders. Let's wrap this episode, but not this season. Again, thanks to Rose Grant. Fatty, did I mention she also hunts and bakes?
No, and you also didn't mention she does Instagram, where you can find more great Rose stories. Hadi and I are also on social media. I'm on Twitter at Fat Cyclist. Hadi is on Instagram at Michael Houghton. Of course, we're both on the Facebook Leadville 100 mountain bike participants page. And if you want to have a conversation, hop on over to our Slack channel. You're going to find that you're going to see a link to it over at the Leadville100podcast.com site.
If you like this show, go to wherever you listen and give us a 5-star rating and write a review to see all the ways you can find this show. It's pod.link/Leadville.
Yeah, and please tell your racing friends too. That is the very nicest, most effective way you can help others find out about our little independent podcast.
Good luck in your riding, racing, and recovery. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the 2022 starting line.
Rose got it done today. She is now a back-to-back champion here in Leadville, 5-time mountain bike marathon national champ. four-time world champion national team member, celebrating with us today. Here comes Jay.